Hi, I'm Michelle and I'm here with Sew with the Hub, and I'm here to share with you today how to set sleeves into a bodice. This specific bodice is the Magnolia from Samantha Marie Designs, and I chose to do the lined version, although you can also choose to do an unlined version. And I want to let you know that the technique I'm about to show you really applies to any sort of sleeve, no matter what size it is. Again, this is a 3T, so this is actually tiny for me, but I'm used to doing like teenage and adult garment clothing. But what I like to do first is just make sure I have my seams lined up. So I did first cover stitch the bodice and tie off all my ends by hand and snip my threads. So I just take the seams and I get them as close together as they can be, and I put in a clip. These clips are actually the clover clips, which I do use for bag making. They're also great for making garments, but honestly, in terms of making garments and using clips instead of pins, you can just simply use like I think it's a 100 pack on Amazon for maybe $8. What happened was I started bag making last year, and what I discovered is those clips can't open up wide enough to hold some of the thickness of the bags that I had been making. Anyhow, I do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to take the clip, get those seams close together, put it together, and one last clip. Sometimes I just take my finger and I put one seam to the left, one seam to the right, and squish them together and hold it there with the other clip. So now as I move forward, I take my sleeve, and this is a plain sleeve. It is just the long sleeve, which is going to have a cuff put on it, and it's super simple. There's no gathering or anything involved like many of the other sleeve option possibilities, and maybe we could go over those sometime. It's very much so the same process no matter what is done to the sleeve. So I'm going to clip this seam one way. It doesn't really matter which way you clip it. And then I want to half the sleeve. So I have my two clips in there, and then I'm going to take this one. Oh, I did not tie off the seam. Let me do that. My best pair of snippers comes from Wawak. They are my favorite. I think they're like $1.50 purchase or something. I buy like 10 at a time because they are the one thing that I can never find. When I'm sewing, I'm always like, is there any of the 20 pairs of scissors I have available here? No? Okay. So, all right. So now I have that done. And I clip it at the halfway point, and then I just throw one for good measure on the seam. Now I'm going to match it up. Some sleeves that you make may have a left and a right. This doesn't really matter. You could put them to either side. So I'm going to match up my clips. You can do the same thing with pins. Again, I just prefer clips. And there's also, this is, I should have mentioned initially, this is a knit pattern for sewing. I would do the same process if it was woven or knit. Most people prefer using pins on woven. Again, I'm just not that person anymore, but you can use clips for sure. And then I just clip it over, and now I'm down and I have it halved. And so now I'm going to take it, if I feel like I need to quarter it, and again, every little extra step you take means you're going to be satisfied when you're done. Like, you won't have to rip anything out. Like, sometimes taking these few extra steps can really help. This is the first time I've used a Samantha Marie Design. So for a dress bodice, I just want to make sure everything is matching up here. There we go. You really want to make sure that you're sandwiching the main bodice in between the sleeve top and then the lining. And you don't want it to be like this as you start to sew because it's going to make your sleeve uneven. But you want to do it like this. And I'm even feeling like I want to put an extra clip in there. And I'm not sure if it's because I haven't sewn something so small, and to me, smaller things are so much more difficult. But here we go. I think this will be just as good. So while I'm here taking some extra steps to share with you the process I do, I would say it's important to first zigzag any sleeve in, particularly for me right now because I'm not acquainted with Samantha Marie Design bodices enough. This is, I have a very standard bodice that I use in work at all the time, so I just want to make sure everything can clip in and work. So I may just adjust it a little bit. Now I'm going to use a zigzag stitch at the longest length on my machine. I don't have to change tension or anything. I'm not planning on this being my final stitch. This is just the step I'm going to take before I move on to my cover stitch to complete adding that sleeve. Longest stitch. I don't want to go more than like a 1/4 inch. So right now I have the edge of the sandwich right at the presser foot like edge. So I could put my finger there and I'm not going past it. It's probably a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which I believe is actually the seam allowance of the pattern. If you wanted to, you could take this onto your serger if that's what you use. I have a process for making garments for sale that I prefer just for durability. I never really tested it any other way, so I'm not sure, like even for my kids, I'm just used to doing this for myself, for my kids, so I don't really stray from taking these steps because I think at the end of the day, they're just kind of worth it rather than having to seam rip a sleeve that I just tried to do without paying attention to any clips or anything. All right, we are almost there. I don't backstitch on it because it's not my permanent stitch. I'm making a choice at this point. You could, again, cover stitch it, or you could continue with your machine. My machine is not a machine I love for knits as a domestic machine, sewing machine. So I'm going to forgo that, and I would use my cover stitch. And then for sale, I would actually serge off the rough seam. So that is my sleeve set in, and I would be ready to take the next step. So let's try out adding that next one. Here's another way you could do it if it's a little easier to think about. Just flip the bodice inwards towards you so that the main bodice is inside. And then we have this. We're going to take our sleeve, put it through to the clips. So my yellow clip is matching up to my red clip at the bottom seams. I'm just going to take a second to make sure I'm lining them up properly. Clips wind up all over the place. And that is why I don't use pins, because pins wind up all over the place. And if you do use pins and have any concerns about them not being in your site or missing or anything like that, one suggestion I have is that you always count the pins that you're using to keep track of them, because we don't have animals I'm concerned about. We have guinea pigs in other part of the house, but they do not generally come into here, but the difficulty is like if you step on a pin or something like that, or if like I were to somehow carry the pin into the other room, like that would be terrible. So here I am. I'm going to go around. I feel like I had great success clipping it. You may have a setup where you like the zigzag stitch, or you have the proper knit setup with your domestic machine. You can always use a double needle if you have that type of setup option. You can use a jersey knit needle and the proper thread to finish the sleeve stitching on your domestic, or use a cover stitch and or a serger to finish. I just appreciate taking the steps just to make sure it's finished, it's ready to sell or give away, and I feel good about the level of quality work because those seams will last. All right, so here we go. Another tip I would say, and I'm not sure that I've ever learned this anywhere, I think it's just the way that I happen to do this, is I like to start at a little bit before the 3 seams that are meeting together, the sandwich seams. And again, we're making sure with the sandwich that we have all the fabrics lined up. And then when we place it under our presser foot, we just want to use our longest stretch stitch, and at the same time, stretch stitch being the zigzag stitch, the longest stitch. And then we just go around and we're mindful and we're keeping things lined up. Oops. I have the bodice lining, sandwiching the main lining with the sleeve inside on top. So I have that. The sleeve is the part that possibly you're gonna have to like pull a little bit on the bodice, lining in main, so that you get the sleeve to fit in there. And just keep making sure as you take clips out, if you have to adjust the curve of the sleeve into it to fit flush against it and flat, so all your pieces are equal, you should, as you come to the end, it should still be like this. You want to keep the sleeve comfortable and even so that when you turn out this temporary stitching, and I call it temporary, you can or cannot pull it out, it's really up to you, but I call it temporary just because I have plans to cover stitch the finish and then serge it, but you may just want to add whatever final stitch type you like. And then as you can see, we have completed setting in the sleeves, and we are ready to add the final stitching. And now it's been cover stitched, so there's all that support all the way around the sleeve. The cover stitch provides a really wonderful stretch type of stitch, perfect for knits. Okay, and now it's been cover stitched, so there's all that support all the way around the sleeve. The cover stitch provides a really wonderful stretch type of stitch, perfect for knits. And I will most likely finish with serging off the seam allowance. And there you have it. You now have what I think is the hardest part of making a dress, getting the sleeve set in properly. Thanks for joining me today. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Sew with the Hub. Thank you.